Your background may be humble, but I'll tolerate it. In return, after marriage, you'll need to quit your job and fully support Kevin in his political career. From a rural bakery to the wife of a politician. You've got quite the luck. Is being a politician such a prestigious job that you can look down on others? Absolutely. I mean, it's a politician we're talking about. Wait, what's the matter? Today was an important day, a family meeting. However, Nicholas and Rachel, my father-in-law and mother-in-law, believed that being a politician was the highest honor and openly looked down on us who ran a rural bakery. My mother, Stella, who was usually calm, had become enraged after our store and I were insulted. Hey! What do you think you're doing? My mother poured water over the business card Nicholas had given her and forcefully placed the glass back on the table. The photo of Nicholas on the business card was now wet. My mother glared at him. She was effectively saying that this was the same as throwing water in his face. I was shocked to see my usually gentle mother do something like this. However, she didn't seem to have lost her composure. In truth, I believe she wanted to splash them directly with the water. But doing so would have put her at risk of being charged with assault. That's why she targeted the business card instead. Even just tearing up a business card in front of someone is quite disrespectful. Splashing water on it was practically an invitation to a fight. Naturally, my in-laws were furious. However, my mother seemed equally enraged. Your bakery supplies products for local events, doesn't it? I'll have them all pulled. Watch your business crumble and regret it. Have you been a member of this town for generations? What is that? You don't seem to know my ancestors. What? Who cares about the ancestors of a little bakery? Unless it's a shop with over 100 years of history, a small, insignificant bakery has no right to boast. This is the first time I've been treated with such disrespect. I'll definitely destroy your store. Don't think you can do business around here anymore. Is that so? Well then, I'll make sure you lose your position as politicians. I don't think my mother's words are lies. I'm sure she really intends to take away the political position from my in-laws. I am Ashley. I'm 28 years old and helping with my family's bakery. Since our bakery is located in the countryside, people often think it must be a historic bakery. However, that's not the case, and our bakery isn't that old. Although it has a short history, it is quite famous as a local souvenir and popular at local events. Therefore, despite being a countryside bakery, we don't have much trouble running it. At 28, I find countryside life to be quite pleasant, like an old person, and I am satisfied with my life in this familiar land since childhood. The only complaint I had was the lack of encounters, but that has been resolved. Although we are not yet married, my boyfriend Kevin recently proposed to me. I plan to announce it after the family meeting is over, so I am holding back from blurting it out when talking to regular customers at the store. Kevin and I have known each other since kindergarten. Of course, at that time, we were not conscious of romance or marriage, and we didn't become particularly close afterward. We attended the same school until middle school, but then went to different high schools, and I heard through the grapevine that Kevin left the countryside to attend university. Since then, he had faded from my memory. However, about 2 years ago, we met again by chance. Hey, could you be Kevin? Huh? Don't you remember? We went to the same school from kindergarten to middle school. I'm Ashley. Oh, from the bakery. Kevin and I were not particularly close friends. However, having been together for such a long time from kindergarten to middle school, I strangely recognized him. We approached each other, searching for traces of our younger selves, and then caught up on each other's lives. Did you take over the bakery? I didn't, but my grandparents retired, so now my mom runs the shop and I help out. What about you, Kevin? After graduating from university, I worked in sales, but my dad told me to come back. Did something happen? Nothing in particular, but he wants me to become a politician, so he intends to make me study from now on. Isn't your dad a politician? Yes, my dad, my granddad, and his dad too. We are a family of politicians. That's amazing. So, you're going to become a politician soon too? I don't know if it'll be soon. For now, I'm planning to look for a sales job around here. You don't seem very keen on it. I'd rather not become one. Because I've seen a lot of my parents' stuff. I want to work and live freely. Why don't you tell him that? It's impossible to go against my dad. Politics is such a closed world, you know? So even now, there's this belief in my house that my father's word is law. In the countryside, those values are still deeply rooted. We were so happy to see each other after such a long time that we ended up talking for a long time. Since this is the countryside, all other acquaintances had left. So, I felt delighted to see an old friend after such a long time. Kevin probably felt reassured to meet a familiar face right after returning home. A reunion with a childhood friend in our hometown. Both of us 26 years old and at the right age. Neither of us had a significant other. With all these conditions met, it would be hard not to follow this path. We started keeping in touch, gradually growing closer as friends for about a year, and then started dating. About a year after dating, he proposed to me, which was just the other day. And today, Kevin is coming to my house for a family meeting. Nice to meet you. Thank you for having me. You went to middle school with Ashley, right? Think of me as a friend's mom and feel free to relax. Since I was meeting her as part of a family meeting, that seemed difficult. My mom said this with a smile at the door, but Kevin's face was tense. However, my mom, who runs a shop, has great communication skills. She's also gentle and approachable. Once we were guided to the living room and started talking, Kevin relaxed in about 10 minutes. You run a shop, that's impressive. It's not just my effort. I get help from Ashley, the staff, and many others. No, the shop runs because of your energy, right? You're always working hard and running around everywhere. Since we don't have a father, I have to work hard. But you always say you enjoy your work. The greeting to my mom went smoothly. Kevin didn't seem to mind that I didn't have a father, as my parents had divorced when I was young. I planned to have him meet my grandparents eventually, but I wasn't worried about that either. My grandparents have lived in the countryside but are not narrow-minded. In fact, they are quite flexible, advising against calling customers Miss or Mr. due to gender concerns, and suggesting we create low-calorie or fiber-rich products for health. Therefore, unless I bring someone very strange, they would likely say that marriage is up to the individuals involved. Having finished greeting my mom, the next step was to greet Kevin's parents. Kevin did a good job greeting my mom, so I had to follow his example. About greeting my parents, just let everything they say go in one ear and out the other. Huh? What do you mean? As I was driving Kevin home after greeting my mom, he said something that I didn't quite understand. When I looked at him, he seemed to have a gloomy expression. I would understand the meaning of this expression a bit later. The next day, I had some errands to run and went to the city office with my mom. While talking to the female clerk at the counter, a man in his 60s suddenly interrupted us. Miss, get me that document. We will assist you in turn, so please wait a moment. Huh, are you putting me on hold? The man leaned on the counter with one elbow, glaring at the female clerk. Judging by his clothes, they seemed expensive. Looking at his attitude and attire, I couldn't help but think, is he some kind of gang member? The man's impact was that strong.
We can wait. We're not in a hurry.
Thank you. I'm sorry about this. My mom smiled and gave up our turn to the man. The clerk probably had to serve us first due to protocol. However, that might have caused trouble with the man. Therefore, my mom, who dislikes conflict, chose to give up our turn. If my mom gave up our turn, the clerk could change the order. The female clerk conveyed her gratitude to my mom with her expression.
So, do you have the application form?
I don't have such a thing. Just get it done.
That would be difficult. It's a fixed procedure.
Do you know who I am? I'll get you fired. I wanted to retort, who are you? But if I did, my mom's effort to keep the peace would be wasted, so I held back. Even without my saying anything, the man was being selfish, and my mom's effort was becoming futile. As I realized our procedure might take a while, the female clerk's supervisor appeared.
Hello. Is there something I can help you with?
This person never hands in the usual documents on time. She is useless. Fire her.
She's still young, please forgive her. I'll get it ready right away.
The female clerk's supervisor retreated with a light smile. It seems the supervisor is used to dealing with this man. I thought this would stop the man's outburst, but it didn't. Miss, can you at least bring me some water? I'm thirsty. The female clerk looked clearly troubled. My mother and I exchanged looks, signaling her to go ahead, and the female clerk reluctantly left her seat. This is my first time seeing a real gangster. Even without any proof, in my mind, this man had become a complete gangster. New experiences always spark curiosity. I found myself glancing at the man several times.
Is there something on my face? No, I was just looking at the poster on the wall.
The local festival poster? It's full of typical stalls and local food, nothing but rustic stuff.
Yes, that's right.
That festival is something the locals look forward to every year, and my shop is planning to set up a booth with cookies. I felt a bit irritated, as if he had insulted my hometown. Just then, the female clerk returned with the water. As she handed it over, the man leaned arrogantly on the counter, watching the interaction between the clerk and us. It didn't feel good at all. Sensing that I wanted to leave quickly, the female clerk hurried with the paperwork. Once the procedure was done, my mother and I quickly walked away from the scene. See you around. I hoped I would never see him again. I turned back to give a brief nod as we headed for the exit. From behind, we could hear the man's voice again. He seemed to be bothering the female clerk once more. I felt sorry for her, but there was nothing we could do except wait for her supervisor to return.
He was quite something, wasn't he? We should avoid getting involved in unnecessary matters. But I feel like I've seen his face somewhere before. Do you know him?
Not at all. As we left the office, my mother and I talked about the man, feeling the tension ease. It's rude to judge someone without knowing them well. However, if even my usually gentle mother had such a strong reaction, it's no wonder I felt the same. When someone leaves such a strong impression, you can't help but become curious about who they are and what they do. My curiosity was unexpectedly soon satisfied.
Thank you very much. That last customer had a lot to say about how people with kids struggle to work in this town.
Before that, they mentioned how young people in general find it hard to work here.
She seems so dependable, even though she looks only a bit older than me.
You should learn from her.
Speaking of work and parenting, that man we saw the other day was something else.
Changing the subject, huh? I remember who he is now.
Really? Who is he? He's a town council member.
Really? That man?
His family has been in politics for generations in this town. Is it okay for someone with that attitude to be a council member? In small town councils, there's a serious lack of people. It's not unusual to have people like him. Since there's a shortage of candidates, most members are in their 60s and are mostly men. In this town, the average age is over 60, and 90% are men. Oh. That's why politics tends to be such a closed-off, old-fashioned industry. When new perspectives don't come in, you get that "I'm the best congressman" kind of attitude. You seem to know a lot about this.
I heard it from Kevin. Wait, a political family. No way. When I heard the same words, political family, from both Kevin and my mother, I had a bad feeling. People say the world is small, but in reality, it's vast. I quickly dismissed the unpleasant thought, thinking such a coincidence couldn't possibly happen. However, while the world may be vast, small towns make coincidences more likely.
So, you're Kevin's fiancé. You're beautiful. I'd marry you myself if I could.
When I went to the family meeting at my in-laws' house, the man I hoped to never see again was sitting on the living room sofa. The man who had been so demanding at the town hall was Kevin's father, Nicholas. Fortunately, or maybe unfortunately, he didn't remember meeting me at the town hall. The moment I saw his face, I felt like collapsing to my knees inside. However, it's often said that first impressions can be deceiving and people can turn out to be good upon getting to know them. Therefore, I needed to learn more about Nicholas.
So, your family runs a bakery? Must be tough making ends meet in a small town. If you ever need money, you can always be my mistress.
I've got plenty. Nicholas spent at least 8 out of 10 minutes making crude remarks. Most of his crude comments revolved around money and sexual topics. It was especially infuriating when he mocked our bakery. With a forced smile, I nodded along to Nicholas's stories, understanding what Kevin meant by telling me to just let his words pass. I consider myself good at finding people's positive traits. But no matter how much I talked with him, I couldn't find any redeeming qualities. Finding something good about Nicholas seemed incredibly challenging. However, there isn't only one way to solve a problem. If Nicholas was difficult, I could focus on building a better relationship with my mother-in-law, Rachel, and have her address Nicholas's crude behavior. I decided to give up on understanding Nicholas and turn to talk to Rachel instead.
You're marrying Kevin?
Kevin's going to be a politician.
And you're from a small-town bakery?
Our family is full of politicians,
and you bring in your dirty, poor commoner blood? Once you get married, you must quit your job and support Kevin. Understand?
Oh, this is bad. Both in-laws were incredibly difficult. I looked to Kevin for help. But he seemed just as stunned by their words, his face blank and unresponsive. He was likely so embarrassed that he mentally escaped to another dimension. That's my fiancé. He had properly taught me how to deal with his parents. I'll try escaping to another dimension too. Barely, but we managed to finish greeting his parents. When Kevin was taking me home, he apologized sheepishly.
Sorry. You were surprised, right? They think this town is their kingdom. Once we're married, I'll try to limit our contact with them as much as possible. Just endure the meetings and wedding for now, even if they say something. It just shows how proud they are of their work and roles, right? That's a good thing. Some of their words were a bit troublesome, but don't worry about it.
Kevin seemed relieved and, for the first time today, showed a genuine smile instead of a forced one. When I got home, I immediately reported about Nicholas to my mother.
Small towns are really tight-knit, aren't they?
I thought so too. Kevin said that once he gets married, he'll try to minimize our interactions with Nicholas and his family. Even his own child is fed up with him. But since he raised Kevin, whom we respect, he must have some qualities we can't see. If we talk to him properly, we might be able to see that side of him. Well, I'm not sure about that. At first, I tried to find the good points of my future in-laws, but I couldn't find anything. However, my mother might be able to find something that I couldn't. If she could, it might help me improve my relationship with my in-laws. I feel bad relying on her, but I decided to place my hopes on my mother. After that, while preparing for the wedding, we also prepared for the meeting between our parents. As the day of the meeting approached, the thought of meeting my future in-laws again made me increasingly nervous. As for my mother, she seemed unfazed, humming while cleaning the showcase as usual. I felt she was a bit too relaxed, but my mother is a calm person, so even if my in-laws said something rude, she wouldn't get upset or disappointed like I would. I decided to stop worrying about others and focus on my own concerns. On the day of the meeting between our parents, my mother and I headed to the upscale restaurant Kevin had reserved. We were escorted by the staff to a room where Kevin and his parents were already seated. When they saw us enter, Nicholas stood up and walked towards us. "Nice to meet you. You're Ashley's mother, right?" "I'm Nicholas." Yes. "Hey, you. Remember, she runs a bakery, not a politician." "Oh, right. Sorry, it's just a habit. Please, have a seat." "Thank you." I thought Nicholas would greet my mother politely, but he handed her his business card instead. It seemed he wanted to make sure she knew he was a politician. Rachel, on the other hand, seemed to look down on us for running a bakery, but since we hadn't even sat down yet, I decided to ignore it. After sitting down, my mother placed the business card he had given her on the table. Even in such situations, my mother follows proper etiquette by not putting away the card immediately. The card featured a cheerful photo of Nicholas. It looked like a miracle shot, almost like a different person from the him in front of us. "Oh, I brought some pound cake from our store. Please enjoy it." My mother offered the pound cake with a smile. Despite my in-laws' apparent disdain for our bakery, I hoped that tasting the cake would change their minds. But my in-laws were a step or two ahead of my expectations. Nicholas took the box of pound cake and handed it to Rachel without a word. Rachel then began unwrapping it under the table to check the contents. After inspecting it, she whispered something to Nicholas. "Thank you for the thoughtful gift. We often forget what common folks eat, so this is helpful. It's important for us as politicians to know what you usually have. But next time, a bit more consideration would be appreciated. Nicholas, you shouldn't talk like that to common folks." "Really? But they need to understand proper manners." "Well, I see." My mother seems unusually irritated by the unpleasant money-related conversation. Sitting next to me, my mother is restlessly clenching and unclenching her hands under the table. I've never seen her like this. It's common for usually mild-mannered people to be unstoppable when they finally explode. Could my mother be that type? The in-laws, oblivious to my growing anxiety, continue their tirade. "How much do you sell this pound cake for?" $13 for 6. It used to be more affordable, but with the recent rise in costs, I've had to increase the price. Did you hear that? Ordinary people think $13 is too much. Hey, that's rude. Stella makes a living with just a small profit from each pound cake she sells. Is that what a bakery business is like?
How do you manage? Everyone says they enjoy it and buys it, so we manage to get by. Isn't that just a polite lie? Pretending to like it out of courtesy? That's what I would do if I received this. My mother starts stretching her fingers under the table, pulling and bending them. Being mocked for her beloved pound cake has increased her anger. I signal Kevin with my eyes to stop his parents, but since he's sitting across from me, he can't see my mother's hands. Kevin, unaware of the situation, doesn't catch my signal. I realized I'd have to intervene, but it seems I was too late. We'll tolerate your lowly bloodline, but in return, Ashley will quit her job after marriage and fully support Kevin in his political career. From a small-town bakery to a politician's wife. Lucky you. Is being a politician such an esteemed position that you can look down on others? Of course. Politicians are highly respected. What's the matter? As they mocked me, my mother's restless hands suddenly stopped. She moved Nicholas's business card from the edge to the center of the table. Everyone's eyes focused on the card, wondering what was happening. My mother then grabbed a glass of water. I thought she was going to drink it before speaking, but she poured it over the card instead. What are you doing? She slammed the glass back on the table. Nicholas's face on the card was drenched. My mother glared at Nicholas, clearly indicating that this was the equivalent of throwing water in his face. I'm shocked to see my usually gentle mother do something like this. However, she didn't seem to have lost her composure entirely. She probably wanted to splash Nicholas and Rachel directly. But that would have been assault. So, she poured water on the card instead. Even just folding the card would be quite disrespectful. But pouring water on it was practically inviting a fight. Naturally, the in-laws were furious. Do you realize we've been politicians here for generations? Your shop provides goods for events, right? I'll make sure everything is pulled from the registry. Go out of business and regret it. Generations of politicians? So what? You don't seem to know anything about our ancestors? My mother remained calm but was clearly very angry. The fact that she brought up our ancestors, something she rarely talked about, was proof of that. What? Why would I know about the ancestors of a small bakery? Unless it's over 100 years old, a small shop shouldn't be so arrogant. I've never been treated this rudely before. I swear I'll shut your shop down. Don't think you can do business around here anymore. Is that so? Then I'll make sure you and your associates are removed from office. You intend to run for office? That's futile. Don't bother. Elections cost money. Besides, how do you plan to take votes from someone who's been a politician for years? Ashley, we're leaving. My mother walked out of the room, and I followed her. As I left the room, the staff brought in lavish dishes, almost as if to replace us. It felt a bit wasteful, but it couldn't be helped. As we exited the restaurant, Kevin ran after us. I'm really sorry for today. I'll cut ties with my parents, so could you please allow me to marry Ashley? Kevin apologized to my mother and expressed his desire to marry me, pleading earnestly. How could such a decent child come from those two? Is it the opposite role model effect? Honestly, I think that's part of it. I've seen so much of what I don't want to be in my parents. With my mother's approval of our marriage, the tense atmosphere eased a bit. Do you mind if I give your parents a little lesson? I've been curious about that. If you can really unseat my father, I'd ask you to do it. He gave his blessing for us to take action against his parents. This would mark the end of his parents' future. About 6 months had passed since the confrontation between our parents. The wedding was approaching, but before that,
it was time for the city council elections. Usually, familiar faces would fill the seats unopposed. However, this time, there seemed to be a bit more commotion than usual. Still, elections happen everywhere and end before you realize it. My mother and I were at our shop as usual when Nicholas and Rachel stormed in, yelling,
"What did you do?"
"Please don't raise your voice in the shop.
It's fine since there are no customers now."
That's not the point. What happened?
Why did I have to lose? And I was the only one who lost. That's ridiculous. And to lose to that young woman is unacceptable.
My mother and I exchanged glances and couldn't help but laugh. It seemed Nicholas and Rachel genuinely didn't understand why Nicholas lost. We'd need to explain it step by step.
The young woman you're talking about?
She ran for the first time at 36. My mother supported her. She's a regular at our shop and always believed this town could be better. She was interested in politics but didn't know how to get involved, so she turned to my mother for help.
What? Just because a bakery supported her, she won the election? What dirty tricks did you use?
Please don't be rude. I volunteered to help. I didn't get paid, and we didn't break any election laws.
Before election laws, it didn't even look like she was campaigning. Where did she get her votes from? And the money? Campaigning costs a fortune. If you fronted it, that's a problem.
I told you, we didn't break any laws. It looked like she wasn't campaigning because she was using social media to share her policies. She used direct messages, videos, a website, and other internet-based methods, with no street speeches. The total spent was under $2,000.
Campaigning online? It should cost tens of thousands, and she spent $2,000? I lost to that method.
Nicholas and Rachel were quite shocked, unable to adapt to new perspectives and clinging to old beliefs. However, there are instances where younger generations in their 30s have won elections by effectively using social media. My grandparents, who are 80 years old, are very flexible and embrace new values to the point of being mindful of gender issues and the language they use when interacting with others. My mother, who is still young at 54, has inherited this adaptability and is even more flexible. She advised that this method would be suitable for electing young people.
No way, there are other candidates too. How can they just snatch my votes like that? It doesn't make any sense. It seems you forget, but we've seen you acting arrogantly at the city office. And outside, you were doing whatever you pleased, leaving a terrible impression on the townspeople. So, that person posted on social media about reforming the old ways of the council. While it wasn't said directly, anyone could see it meant stopping council members from being overbearing. That created an atmosphere where people wanted you out. And if a young woman is doing it, it makes people want to support her even more, right? The internet can be scary like that. My mother was explaining this to my in-laws with a pleased and satisfied expression, happy with the outcome she had aimed for. However, the most important point hadn't been mentioned yet. It wasn't just the power of social media that led to this result. I believe my mother's presence was a significant factor. Since my mother doesn't like to talk about this, I decided to explain it for her. My mother's knowledge about elections and her ability to gather votes have another important reason. You don't have to say that.
No, it's important to explain. Our ancestors were landlords in this area. During land reforms, we had to give up most of our land. This bakery was built around that time. So, it doesn't have a long history. It doesn't have a long history. But being former landlords, we have valuable historical documents about this area.
We've lent these documents to the city office, which is a gesture of goodwill from my mother. The remaining land we have is now lent for free as parkland for local children. This, too, is thanks to my mother's generosity.
So, you're saying you're connected with the city office?
Exactly. You were just arrogantly flaunting your power without achieving much, so you didn't get this kind of information. Unlike you, my mother has built trustful relationships instead of just commanding people. So, it was easy to gather information about your bad reputation and take countermeasures. And when someone supported by my mother comes forward as a candidate, it's easier for them to gain trust. Our regular customers from the bakery also supported her a lot. It created an atmosphere where people naturally wanted to oust you, so eventually, we didn't have to do much.
While I was talking, my mother looked a bit embarrassed. Nicholas loves to flaunt his power as a politician, but my mother is not like that. She doesn't like to talk about being former landlords or lending documents and land. It's this modesty that has earned her the trust of those around her. This trust from the townspeople leads to many requests for help. Among these were election-related tasks, leveraging her local knowledge and advertising strategies honed at the bakery, which proved useful this time. Too bad.
Better luck next time. I'm not really sure, but isn't the next election in 4 years?
Fight young with young. Next, we'll put Kevin up. Your marriage is off.
Why does you get to decide both my political career and my marriage, Dad? Kevin, you're here?
Kevin emerged from the back of the shop, surprising his parents. We were about to become a married couple, so it shouldn't be so shocking for him to be around his in-laws-to-be. It was the weekend, and he had the day off, so he was at the shop. Earlier, he had been observing the craftsmen making sweets in the back, not hiding.
I said I was cutting ties after our parents met. Since I did, stop trying to force me into politics. And you have no right to cancel our marriage.
You can't be serious about cutting ties. You just said that in the heat of the moment, didn't you? Don't marry that guy. We are a family of politicians. So you must become a politician too.
I believe being a politician is a respectable job. But it's not just being a politician that makes someone admirable, right? It's being a politician who actually does good work that people respect. I don't think you're admirable at all, just throwing your weight around and lording your power over others.
Do whatever you want. I'll definitely ruin this shop. His parents stormed out, shouting. They still seemed to believe this town was their personal kingdom or something. Having already talked to the town hall, I had an idea of what would happen next. Even without doing anything, they would soon realize their mistake. Nicholas was dragged from his seat as a councilman, and complaints of harassment and misconduct poured in from all sides. There was even information from another council member about embezzlement. It seemed some council members were troubled by his tyranny. But with his family's long history in politics, he wielded undue power, making it difficult for anyone to fight back. Now, seeing a chance, some with a sense of justice took action, while others, still stuck in old ways, worried me that they might defend him. However, they too had engaged in harassment, so they stayed silent to avoid getting involved. Nicholas, abandoned and without support, could not return to his position. He was left alone, abandoned by everyone. In this situation, he could never return to being a senator. However, Nicholas had been a politician for many years, so he must have accumulated a significant amount of money. Yet, it won't be possible for him to live comfortably off that money from now on. With the continuous stream of accusations, the amount of compensation he might have to pay is staggering. How much money will he be left with in the end? Additionally, he could face criminal charges. If that happens, finding another job would be very difficult. Most importantly, his in-laws, who had once thought of him as the most powerful politician, lost that prestigious title. This was the biggest shock to them. Kevin has also made it clear that he does not want to become a politician, so the legacy of the political family ends with him. In this situation, his in-laws have lost all motivation, and they stay indoors as they are looked at with cold eyes when they go out. Amidst all this, Kevin and I had our wedding. Of course, his in-laws were not present. After the wedding, we headed to the county office. The clerk greeted us with a warm smile. This alone showed how much easier it has become to work. With Nicholas gone, the woman my mother supported is thriving. Kevin and I got our marriage certificate issued. We are now officially married. I'm divorcing you because I got an employee pregnant, and I'm going to give her the position of being the company president's wife. My husband Dylan said, without a hint of guilt, thrusting the divorce papers in front of me. Are you serious? She's only 23, right? I might have felt a bit of affection for my husband of 30 years, Dylan. But he trampled over my feelings with ease. Are you joking? Unlike you, a housewife, I'm the president of a company. His usual attitude dried up any love I had for him completely. And my heart, now empty, filled with hatred. Okay, I understand. And with that, our 30 years of marriage came to an end. He really doesn't understand anything, does he? He's so impulsive. Saying I wouldn't care if he regretted anything that happened afterward, I signed the divorce papers. Then, 2 weeks after the divorce, I kept quiet, but that girl you got pregnant. What? Dylan, who had a lavish wedding ceremony abroad, was about to learn a terrible truth. My name is Abby. I am 56 years old, the same age as my husband, Dylan, who runs a company. Dylan and I met at a party. Coming from the countryside, all my classmates were either married or had children already. I wasn't exactly in a rush, but seeing my close friends' families, I yearned for a family of my own. Especially since I was raised by my grandparents after my parents died when I was young. To be honest, I wasn't very close to my grandparents. Probably because my father had eloped with their only daughter, my mom. So, I always dreamed of building a bright and happy family of my own. And then, by chance, I met him at a party. Having grown up in a single-parent family, I can understand your feelings to some extent. By the way, I'm thinking of starting a company and would like to do it with you, Abby. Would you date me? I think we could make it work together, with someone as intelligent and goal-oriented as you. His sincere words attracted me, and we started dating. That's when my fate began to spiral out of control. We dated with the intention of marrying, and eventually got married at the age of 26. 30 years have passed since then, just the two of us. We don't have children. Because we were not blessed with any. We married at a good age, and started preconception care when we were both 30, after the conversation about establishing his company had settled. But it didn't work out. He seems to believe that the reason for not getting pregnant always lies with the woman. The first half year felt normal, but as time passed, 1 year, 2 years, his attitude worsened. There must be something wrong with you for not being able to get pregnant. Go get yourself checked out. I know a guy who runs a gynecology clinic. Go to him, he said. I really didn't want to. He made it sound simple, but gynecology is a very delicate field. I would have been slightly okay if the doctor was a stranger, but the idea of going to someone he knew made me uncomfortable. I said I'd prefer to see my regular doctor, and he frowned and started complaining. Does that mean you don't trust my acquaintance?
It's not that. I didn't say that. It's just that my regular doctor knows my body better. Fine, do whatever you want. But don't expect me to deal with whatever happens later.
Angry, he left somewhere. Despite upsetting him, I strongly felt that I should be able to choose my own doctor and proceeded as planned. The result was that there was nothing wrong with me. But to know for sure whether it was infertility, he needed to be tested too, which I suggested. Yet, this only made him more upset.
There's no way I'm infertile. What an irresponsible thing for a doctor to say. This is exactly the problem. If we had gone to my acquaintance from the start, none of this would have happened. But it's too late now. I've decided that the failure of the preconception care is your fault, so deal with it yourself.
This was how the issue of preconception care remained unresolved, and we just dragged it along until we were over 40. I was open to the idea of having children if I could get pregnant, but it seemed Dylan wasn't. He seemed to think it was embarrassing to get pregnant after 40, and from that time on, we lived together as a couple but as if we were complete strangers to each other. Still, as a company owner, he needed a successor. So, we decided to adopt a child with no relatives and welcome him as our own. Our son's name is Eric. He grew up to be honest, kind, and principled. He is now 21 years old. He is attending university while being groomed as the successor to Dylan's company. Now that I'm 56, I started to think seriously about the future, when a shocking incident occurred.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Brenda. The president always takes such good care of me. She greeted me in a drawn-out manner, a new employee at Dylan's company. Her appearance added another worry to my list. My first impression of Brenda was that she was a beauty who would fit right into the glamorous world. She had sharp features, a good figure, and seemed to be about 5 feet 5 inches tall. She had worked as a model while in college, I heard. She's not modeling now since she joined Dylan's company as a new employee, but she still has an unmistakable aura. The reason she came to greet me was that she moved into the house next door. The apartment next to ours is rented entirely as company housing, primarily for single employees. Brenda, living alone, preferred it for its cheaper rent compared to regular apartments. Everyone knows that the company president's house is next to the company housing. So at first, I thought Brenda had simply come over to greet us. But, unexpectedly, she made a shocking statement.
Just between us, I think the president really likes me. During my interview, he complimented my looks a lot, and I come from a pretty good university. Oh, were you a high school graduate?
Sorry about that. Her words clearly looked down on me, making me tremble with anger.
Education is just a part of the process to me. If it doesn't lead to results, it doesn't mean much. That's how I see it.
Sparks flew between me and Brenda. I've always been competitive and can't help responding to unpleasant comments. In elementary school, I was often teased by classmates for being raised by my grandparents. I didn't want to drag that bitter feeling forever, so I made sure to express my dislike clearly. Brenda, perhaps not expecting me to retort, was momentarily taken aback. However, an unexpected ally appeared.
Oh, isn't that Brenda? How's work? Getting used to it?
It was Dylan. Of course, he wasn't on my side but supported Brenda, whom he favored.
Abby, stop being so childish. Isn't it embarrassing for the wife of the president? This is why I don't want to introduce you in front of everyone. Don't make me ashamed any more than this, okay?
Yeah, I got it. He has always been like this. Always putting me down and never once standing by my side. The reason I still live with him is because of Eric. He is a junior in college, and he has a little over a year left. But once he enters society, I've thought it might be time to end things with him. That means I only need to endure for less than 2 more years. And so, I continued this false marriage with him. However, the arrival of this new employee, Brenda, would unexpectedly derail my plans. Not long after Brenda moved into the company housing, I discovered something significant. Ugh, Dylan, do you really like me that much? Of course, I prefer a young girl like you over an old hag any day. You're so cute and I love you. That day, Dylan had said he couldn't come home because of an important business deal. So, I decided to eat out alone. Being by myself for the first time in a while, I thought I'd enjoy a drink. While walking through the urban hub, I witnessed Brenda and Dylan walking arm in arm. And I was speechless when I saw the building they entered. Dylan was definitely having an affair with Brenda. Since then, I've been quietly making certain moves, of course, without letting them realize it. Months later, Dylan said with a creepy smile, "I got an employee pregnant, so I'm divorcing you. The position of being the company president's wife will go to her." The employee, that girl he referred to, was undoubtedly Brenda. I understood instantly. I just glared at him in silence. Then, without showing any remorse, he thrust the divorce papers in front of me. "Are you serious? She's only 23, right? Plus, a new employee getting pregnant by the president and taking over as his wife is unheard of. None of that matters. Do you seriously think you can take responsibility for her life?" After 30 years together, I guess I did have some affection for him. That's why I said it as a warning, but Dylan didn't think at all and started complaining to me. "Are you kidding me? I'm the president of the company. As long as I'm here, Brenda won't be threatened, and I can provide for her. You, a non-productive housewife, should worry about being divorced and left by your husband." His usual attitude finally made me feel that my love for Dylan had completely dried up. And my heart, now empty, filled with hatred. "Yeah, sure. If you say so, I won't stop you. But just don't regret it," I said as a final warning, but it didn't seem to resonate with Dylan. "Regret? I won't. Unlike you, a housewife with no real career, I've been winning from the start. Now go on, live as a lonely woman divorced at 56. Thus, a period was put on our 30 years of marriage. Men have no prohibition period for remarriage, so once divorced, they can marry someone else immediately. Dylan, having received the divorce papers I signed, submitted them along with Brenda's marriage registration, probably confusing the city hall staff. But that aside, it seemed divorcing me and marrying Brenda was a foregone conclusion, and they soon flew abroad. Their purpose was a wedding ceremony. Perhaps they couldn't invite employees to a wedding stemming from an affair, but they still had a grand ceremony with a small number of guests. I wonder how much they spent. After their wedding overseas, they enjoyed their honeymoon and returned home after about 2 weeks. After the divorce, Dylan moved out, perhaps buying a condominium somewhere, and now lives there with Brenda. However, when he returned for something he forgot, I greeted him with a thin smile and said, "Did you check your credit card statement properly?" Startled by my sudden question, he looked visibly uncomfortable. But his expression fell with my next words. I kept quiet, but that girl. "What?" "Seems she's hooked on a guy from the nightclub." "Huh? Wait, what are you talking about all of a sudden? Nightclub? That can't be, she's a pure maiden." Seeing him say such things gave me chills. However, the fact that Brenda was into nightclubbing remained unchanged, no matter what anyone said. As he looked incredulous, I placed a photo in front of him. And just like that, he let out a silent scream.
Thought cheating and divorcing was the end? Thought a housewife like me wouldn't know anything, so wouldn't claim compensation in a divorce court? Haha, how funny. Unfortunately, I had been preparing all along to get back at you both, with enough care to have such photos ready. Dylan, with trembling hands, somehow lifted the photo and scrutinized it. This blonde guy is from the nightclub? Yes, that's right. It's from one of the highest-rated places in the urban hub, apparently. Brenda has the means to treat these men? Based on the empty bottles nearby, I'd estimate she spent well over $10,000. $10,000? There's no way she has that kind of spare cash. Repeating my words, Dylan buried his face in his hands. Then, as if coming to his senses, he started checking his credit card statement on his smartphone. His face grew increasingly pale. As I thought, Brenda had been using Dylan's credit card to lavish money on men. For her, it was a way to get pampered by men without spending her own money. There couldn't be a more convenient ATM than that. Yes, he was completely duped by her. Realizing this, he looked up at me and asked, "Can I claim this as unauthorized use with a credit card company?" There's no way. She's not a minor but a full-grown 23-year-old. Plus, she's your spouse. It's not like she stole the card. You gave her the freedom to use it, right? As I said this, Dylan continued with an agonized expression. I gave it to her for household expenses, thinking she'd use a few $1,000s at most, maybe up to $100,000. But to spend it on men? That's inconceivable. What's going on? He was lamenting, but it was his own fault. He failed to see her true nature and gave her a credit card with a limit that exceeded $10,000. I couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of the situation. Hours later, I received a call from Brenda. Hey, were you secretly digging into my affairs? I got back and Dylan showed me the photo and accused me. Unbelievable. Seriously, stop it with your ugly, old jealousy. The photo I showed him earlier was brought back by him and used to confront her. Seems like she got a good scolding, revealing a side of her that's far from the usual charming facade. I almost burst into laughter. Dylan was one thing, but she was another story. Being cheated on and having my husband stolen justifies this, doesn't it? The affair is a fact, but without objective evidence, you might have denied it. So, I asked a detective to provide indisputable evidence of the affair, whether it's photos or audio. I responded calmly. She seemed to be grinding her teeth on the other end of the line. After a few seconds of silence, she huffed and said, "Then fine. This is defamation, so I'm going to sue you." Huh? I let out an incredulous laugh. Did she really understand the meaning of defamation when she said that? In this case, Brenda and Dylan, who ended a 30-year marriage due to an affair, are on the offending side. If anyone were to sue, it would be me, the victim. I was astounded by Brenda's misunderstanding. But her misconceptions didn't stop. I have Dylan, the ultimate ATM. A little cry, and he's immediately back on my side, and you're nothing. Just wait until the day you're the one crying. With that, she hung up abruptly. Naturally, Brenda ended up being the one to suffer later on. A few days after I exposed Brenda's true nature to Dylan, Brenda came to me begging for forgiveness. About the compensation in the divorce, if I'm sued, I'll pay, so could you tell Dylan? Suing a 23-year-old for marital fraud seems a bit much. The turn of events was as I expected, and I couldn't help but laugh. Brenda frowned for a moment, but, realizing her current predicament, could only glare at me resentfully. Dylan, being a company president, had connections with lawyers. That's probably why you asked. So,
he inquired whether he could sue her for marital fraud. Brenda had clearly stated she viewed him as an ATM, showing no love. And regarding the pregnancy, if it turned out not to be his child, the outcome was clear. Despite her bravado, when faced with the possibility of being sued, she was powerless. That's why she came to me for help. Ironically, I was the only one who could stop Dylan in this situation. Unfortunately, I am human too, and I have feelings about the way you two treated me. Paying money isn't going to settle everything, you know? You knew he was married and yet engaged in an affair, and even got pregnant. Can you understand the mental anguish I experienced when I found out? Without a single laugh and speaking rapidly, I told Brenda, who seemed to shrink away in fear. She had no words to return. Let me be clear, I have no intention of forgiving Brenda or Dylan. I thought it was about time to settle this. I had been somewhat considerate because Brenda was pregnant, but it seems that's no longer necessary. I had made up my mind. Let's handle the future through lawyers, shall we? I don't plan to drag this on forever. Be prepared. With a glare, Brenda let out a small scream and ran away. If her feelings were so weak that she'd flee from harsh words, she shouldn't have started this in the first place. But once something has happened, there's no undoing it. A few days later, Dylan came to my house. He had a smile plastered on his face, as if it were glued on, pleading for a reconstruction of our relationship. The audacity was astounding. Thinking so, I quickly dispelled his hopes. Now you want to start over? What kind of nerve do you have? Besides, I told you, didn't I? Can you take responsibility for her life after getting your 23-year-old girlfriend pregnant? I never imagined she would be such a deceitful woman. Using my credit card to lavish gifts on men, buying luxury goods at will. Because of her, I lost about $50,000 from my savings. That was good information. I smirked and said, "That's our joint savings, right? I'll remind you, we need to split the amount from the time we divorced. I believe we had about $200,000 saved up as a married couple, right? I'll be taking $100,000 as my share of the marital assets. Unfortunately, since Brenda spent your share, all that's left for you is $50,000. At that, Dylan began to get angry. He argued that the money Brenda spent was an ineffective force, so we should divide the assets at $150,000. His self-centered argument finally brought me to my limit of patience. If he was the one cheated on, maybe he could make such a claim, but since his affair partner wasted the marital savings on other men, he had no right to say anything. And he was forgetting one more crucial thing, which I decided to remind him of. I checked with the lawyer, and dividing the $200,000 at the time of our divorce for the property division is a done deal. Plus, Dylan, you should be prepared. You're getting removed from the company's top position. What? No, divorce and the company have nothing to do with each other. The company is mine. I built it. The property division shouldn't. He was cut off when the living room door opened, and the person standing there made Dylan freeze. It was Eric. Dad, I'm disappointed. To think you'd rather not pay off your mistress' splurges with your own savings, so you dip into the company's funds. At that moment, his demeanor completely changed. Until then, he might have appeared somewhat confident, perhaps thinking he could talk his way out of it with me. But with Eric's arrival and his statement, Dylan found himself in a tight spot. Now, as he pointed out, Dylan had been tampering with the company's funds. It's not a cute amount like a few $1,000. Not just a few $1,000s, but over $100,000 had been embezzled. Dad, you know I've been studying economics and business at university while working in accounting at your company, right? When I noticed something was off and conducted an internal investigation, it turned out Dad was embezzling company money," he stated, presenting irrefutable evidence. Realizing escape was futile, Dylan, like Brenda before him, pleaded repeatedly for forgiveness. "I was wrong. I admit it. So, Eric, can't you overlook it? I'm your dad. Abby, we were married for 30 years. Be a bit kinder to me. Please." Such a shallow apology was unnecessary. Neither mine nor Eric's feelings had changed at all. The executives had already agreed that someone like him could not be entrusted with the company. By the time Dylan realized it, it was too late, and all he could do was cry and apologize. Then, someone barged in. It was obvious who it was: Brenda. "So you were here. Since the man thing came out, you haven't come home, and you've been avoiding me at work. Fine, I'm divorcing Dylan. The child is definitely yours, so you'll be paying alimony and compensation in the divorce." Facing her red-faced anger, it wasn't me or Dylan who responded, but Eric. "Brenda, do you understand why I became Mom and Dad's adopted son?" "Huh?" "Because this old lady is infertile." "Mom is not infertile. The one who is infertile is Dad." At that moment, the atmosphere froze. After starting infertility treatments, we couldn't get cooperation from him. He might be infertile. But without his cooperation for the tests, there was nothing we could do. I had given up then, but now I couldn't shake off my suspicion. Brenda was 23, and I was in my early 30s when we started the treatments. Though there's a difference, fertility rates don't change much until about 35. So when I learned Brenda was pregnant, I decided to visit someone. That someone was the gynecologist Dylan had initially recommended. I was really conflicted about going, but I thought maybe they knew something and sought help. That's when I found out the shocking truth. I wasn't infertile, but Dylan was. Apparently, he has no ability to impregnate anyone. Before dating me, his ex-girlfriend told him to get tested reluctantly. Knowing his pride and their acquaintance, the doctor didn't tell the truth and said there were no issues. When visiting the doctor, a friend worried about me insisted on coming along, but I never imagined finding out such a fact. As a doctor, not disclosing the actual test results wasn't right. But blaming him now doesn't change anything. The fact remains, you are infertile. So, Brenda, how exactly did you conceive his child? Brenda started to falter. If she truly believed Dylan was the father, she could have outright denied my claims. Her inability to do so probably meant something. Dylan, more upset by Brenda piling on lies than the revelation of his infertility, began to berate her fiercely. Seeing them about to start an ugly argument, I intervened. "Brenda initially approached you to use you. That's an undeniable fact. I understand your anger, but you cheated on me first. That's also a fact. Before you two start a nasty fight, isn't there something you should say to me?" With a glare, Dylan shut his mouth. Then Brenda said, "I'm sorry. I never thought it would come to this." "Oh? So you destroyed a family with that mindset?" She could only cry and keep apologizing. I couldn't bear to watch. Exchanging a nod with Eric, I presented them with the documents for the compensation claim in the divorce court. Seeing it, Dylan's voice cracked. "Hey! What's with this amount? It's ridiculous. Divorce settlements for cheating are supposed to be around $30,000 at most, right? What is this amount?" The amount I demanded was $100,000. It's understandable to be shocked by the high figure, but there's a valid reason for it. For the past 10 years, Dylan, despite being in a superior position as the company's president,
had not given me, a housewife, any living expenses. I managed because I had about $100,000 inherited from my parents. I used it for living expenses and Eric's education, so frankly, my personal savings were zero. Inheritance isn't subject to division, yet I had to use it because Dylan didn't provide living expenses. It was a force majeure. And the final straw was the affair. The higher the social status of the party involved, the higher the compensation in a divorce court due to responsibility, as explained by the lawyer. I went through all past cases, searching for someone in a similar situation as me. I found cases where individuals won over $100,000 in the past. The amount my lawyer and I proposed wasn't just arbitrarily high, it was calculated based on Dylan's conduct over the past 10 years, his position as a president, his ability to pay, and his behavior after the affair was revealed. In other words, it was justified. If they had complaints, they were prepared to make them pay this amount even if it meant going to court. Not providing living expenses to your housewife, and making me pay for that and the education fees from my inherited money, knowing well enough that you weren't giving any. No remorse from you, and Brenda even threatened to sue for defamation. You too fulfill the conditions for a high compensation in divorce court. Then Brenda desperately clung to a pathetic plea. Please wait. I'm reflecting now. So what? Expecting leniency or a reduction? Such a change of heart. I was beyond angry. I was astounded. With a heavy sigh, I glared at her and said, "Now you're desperate and want forgiveness? A reduction? Or perhaps to be overlooked? Such naive thoughts won't work." Eventually, Brenda became speechless, just biting her lip and looking at me. Turning to Dylan, he let out a small shriek. Then he started saying the unimaginable. I was, like Abby, deceived by her. Yes, I'm a victim too. So, let's fight this together. Huh? The thought of abandoning her to lighten his financial burden in the divorce settlement. He must be aiming for that by reconciling with me. To think such a shallow man was my husband embarrassed me. Both of you are pathetic. If you cheat, take responsibility till the end. That's what adults do. You're not children who've just learned to talk. Eric joined in the argument. This is the worst. I no longer see you as my dad. My only parent is Mom. Brenda, if you're here just to cheat, you might as well leave. Said and done, the two were unable to retort and just collapsed on the spot. After involving our lawyers in discussions, we settled on $70,000. Initially, my lawyer had said that getting $40,000 to $50,000 would be good. But I couldn't forgive his actions, so I insisted on $100,000. Even if reduced, I was confident of securing about $50,000. The final conclusion was that Dylan's affair, without providing living expenses or paying for our child's education, was egregious. And this was determined in court. As a result, Dylan and Brenda were ordered to pay $70,000. Dylan was arrested for embezzling company funds, receiving a suspended sentence. With a suspended sentence, he avoided prison but fell into a debt hell, hitting rock bottom. Of course, he ended with Brenda. She tried to find the father among dozens of candidates but eventually gave up. The child was placed in a facility, arguably better off than being raised by her. Brenda resigned and, after being employed elsewhere for a low wage, also took up night jobs to continue paying the divorce compensation to me. Dylan was ousted from the company, unable to find employment due to spreading rumors, now juggling part-time jobs. They had to let go of the condominium they lived in and now likely reside in an old, drafty apartment.
The executive director took over as the new president, with plans to pass it on to Eric when ready. The company took a significant hit but is now moving forward united. I got money and the house in the property division, but sold the house to live in a smaller apartment, finding it more peaceful. This is somehow more calming. Eric graduated from university successfully and is respected in the company. After a tumultuous decade and divorce process, I now look forward to a peaceful retirement. Enjoying the straight and honest young man he has become, unlike his irresponsible father. My name is Kate. I'm a 48-year-old homemaker. In this day and age, some might think being a homemaker is enviable. But I'm not the kind of homemaker who lives in luxury on my husband's earnings. Ben, should I help you wipe down? I'm sorry. Ben, who's in his mid-60s, had a stroke a decade ago when he was still full of energy. Since then, he's been bedridden. All this time, I've been caring for him. We used to worry about not being able to have children when we were younger. But now I see it as a blessing that allows me to devote myself to caregiving. Life is strange, isn't it? Ben's body doesn't move as he wishes, but his mind is clear. Maybe that's why. He always seems to feel sorry towards me. But I wish he wouldn't. I don't find this life too burdensome. Sure, caregiving support services have increased compared to the past, and it's not like I can't take a break at all. But I started caregiving in my 30s, and now I'm in my 40s. I can't deny that my physical strength isn't what it used to be. So, naturally, I wish for some support. From my husband. Could you give me a hand? And then, I'm busy right now. Tom, my husband said. I might understand if he were actually working. But how is lying on the sofa and fiddling with his mobile phone busy? If you're just looking at your phone, help out. It's your dad, after all. I'm supporting by working, aren't I? Let me rest at least on my days off. Saying that, my husband frowned irritably and stood up to leave the room. It's always the same. He doesn't lift a finger. Even if he can't help with caregiving, it would be nice if he at least took care of himself. My husband, hand on the door, turned back and said, "Oh yeah, I have a business trip for the next 3 days. Get everything ready." Again? Can't you at least? I'm busy. You should do that much as a wife. Shouting, my husband left the room. Does preparing himself challenge his pride? We're supposed to support each other as a married couple. How did it come to this? No choice. I'll get some help after the helper comes. I sighed and kept staring at the door through which my husband had left. Is that boy off on a business trip again? The night my husband left for his trip, as I was drinking coffee, Linda showed up. Linda, who can't get by without her cane due to mobility issues, is otherwise sharp. While Ben was sleeping, I took a break and helped Linda sit down by taking her hand and guiding her to a chair. After taking a sip of the freshly brewed coffee and exhaling, Linda said with a hint of sadness, "He's always away on business trips several times a month. I wonder if that's really the case." Well, who knows? Linda and I are probably thinking the same thing. Harboring the same suspicions. Infidelity. That word flickers through my mind. But I deliberately don't voice it. What difference does it make if I find out about my husband's infidelity? He'll surely deny it, and gathering evidence would cost money and effort. But I don't have the luxury to deal with that right now. My affection for my husband is almost non-existent. And naturally, his affection towards me is the same. But having lost my own parents early, my in-laws are as precious to me as my own. I can't abandon them. After all, my husband does contribute financially to the household, so maybe it's better to leave his issues be. After a long life of caregiving, I've given up. It wasn't always like this. My husband used to be kind to me when we were distressed about not being able to have children. He used to be dutiful to his parents. But as soon as the caregiving for his parents began, he changed as if he were a different person. Acting on his own whims, almost as if he was single. He started leaving home frequently, claiming he was on business trips. He grew colder, not just towards his parents, but towards me as well.
You're such an unattractive woman. Eating with you ruins my appetite.
After being bluntly told that, we started eating separately. Now, my husband eats alone, while I feed Ben and share meals with Linda.
I don't want to sleep in the same room.
Since he said that, I've been sleeping on the living room sofa. But the kind and grateful words from my caring in-laws somehow kept me going. Just when I was feeling the distance from my husband, another troubling issue arose. The money my husband was bringing home decreased. Despite discussing various problems, he stubbornly insisted his salary had decreased. But I knew he was lying. I happened to see his pay stub. To my surprise, his salary had actually increased. I wondered if he had received a promotion, but that wasn't the important part. The problem was that he was lying and reducing the money for the household.
That's quite a sum for your parents' taxi, fares to the hospital, and hiring helpers. Our living expenses are...
What? Managing with the money provided is a homemaker's duty. If you can't do that, you're failing as a homemaker. If you can't even manage that, what value do you have? No matter how much I pleaded, my husband wouldn't listen. Seeing this, my in-laws seemed apologetically again. They even offered their meager pensions to help with the living expenses. Feeling sorry, I struggled to make ends meet with the money my husband gave. As a result, our meals became vegetable-centered and modest. My in-laws claimed to prefer such meals, but my husband would say,
"How can I eat such plain food?"
And he started dining out every night. Consequently, the money he brought home decreased even more. A vicious cycle that also lessened his time at home. And in proportion, my spirit dwindled away. On that particular day, Ben's condition suddenly worsened. A stroke had recurred. In no time at all, Ben passed away. Initially, I was stunned, but then tears wouldn't stop flowing. Linda and I hugged and cried in front of Ben, who looked as if he were merely sleeping. At that time, my husband was, yet again, on a business trip. When I finally calmed down a bit and called him.
"Hello? Who's this?"
A woman answered the phone, to my shock. My husband was in the midst of an affair.
"Hey, don't just pick up like that."
I heard my husband's voice, sounding flustered as he snatched the phone away. Normally, I'd be seething with anger in such a situation. But having just lost Ben, my heart felt numb, and I was surprisingly calm. Without confronting him about the affair, I simply informed him that Ben had passed away.
"Oh, really?"
His response was disconcertingly brief. Can someone be this indifferent about their own father's death? To me, my husband seemed as alien as a being from another planet. No, that's an insult to aliens. Even in space, I believe there's some sense of parent-child bond. Throughout the funeral, my husband maintained a detached demeanor, merely going through the motions of being the chief mourner. Relatives consoled the grieving Linda. Meanwhile, the actual son seemed to spend most of the time fiddling with his mobile phone and yawning. Everyone looked at my husband with disdain. Because of him, Ben's funeral, whom I dearly loved, became a dismal affair. A month passed since then. Between dealing with the aftermath of Ben's death and caring for Linda's mental health, time flew by. My husband was in an exceptionally good mood today. because today was the day Ben's will was to be disclosed. Ben had prepared a notarized will, which doesn't require court verification. It was kept in the lawyer's office. Today, Linda was to bring it from the office and open it. Normally, one would assume the inheritors to be Linda, the wife, and my husband, the only son. I wondered if there was really a need for a will. Could there be a secret child? With bated breath, I watched the proceedings, reminding myself that as a DIL, I had no rights to the inheritance. The lawyer, called in for this day, along with relatives of both in-laws, were present as witnesses. As everyone watched, the lawyer opened and read the will. That was, Linda was to inherit the house and land, and half of all other assets. That was expected. But what followed was shocking. The remaining half wasn't left to my husband, the son. What? Kate and I are to inherit the remaining half equally? My husband stood up, shouting in disbelief. Indeed. The will unexpectedly left part of the inheritance to me. Stunned, I watched as my husband pointed at me and yelled furiously. Why does my wife have to take the inheritance? I'm the real son. Everything, apart from Mom's share, should obviously come to me. But the will states, I don't care. It's invalid. Invalid. My husband screamed at the lawyer. I was speechless, shocked by the sudden turn of events. But what my husband said next left me completely astounded. I was the one who mostly took care of Dad. She didn't do much. What? What is this man saying? I already knew he was a liar, but this lie was too much. He took care of Ben mostly? Who could say such a thing? I couldn't stay silent anymore and was about to speak when. What are you talking about? Have some shame, you foolish son. The shout didn't come from me. Unexpectedly, it was Linda. A dramatic soundtrack seemed to play as Linda's face filled the screen. Or at least, that's how it felt. Then, a close-up of my husband's shocked face. Silence fell over the room. Linda, usually so quiet and never raising her voice, had taken us all by surprise. My husband, stunned by her uncharacteristic fierceness, was speechless. In the midst of this, Linda continued. Mostly took care of Ben, you say? Which mouth of yours is saying that? You do nothing but play with your phone or watch TV every day. You don't even eat at home. You barely contribute any money to the household. And to top it off, you lie about business trips to cheat. You really don't deserve a cent of the inheritance. What? Is that true? Reacting to Linda's words were Ben's brothers. Strong-looking men due to their construction business. Confronted by these imposing figures, my husband seemed even smaller. Eh? What do you mean? Mom, I might not have been home much, but the affair accusation is just baseless. Don't make random claims without any evidence. My husband was stuttering and sweating in panic. Without missing a beat, Linda produced a large envelope. Where did that come from? Did she have it hidden? I hadn't noticed it at all. Do you know what this is? It's filled with evidence of your affairs. I didn't think Kate, who worked so hard taking care of Ben, would have the means. So Ben and I hired a detective. Be prepared. With that, Linda scattered the contents of the envelope. After my husband's scream, the relatives reacted. What is this? Ugh, that's disgusting. Really, my eyes feel dirty now. The reaction from the relatives was one of disappointment. The contents were numerous embarrassing photos of my husband and his mistress. What are they even doing outdoors? I didn't know my husband had such hobbies. Never thought I'd discover such hidden sides of my husband after 20 years of marriage. Like the relatives, I was appalled.
Shame on you. Doing such disgraceful things. Claiming you took care of Ben, saying Kate did nothing. Insisting the inheritance is all yours. How dare you say such things? You shameless, unfilial son. Apologize to Kate. It's not like that. This is wrong. It's not wrong, you foolish son.
Linda, calm down, please. You'll burst a blood vessel. It's too early to follow Ben. Perhaps it was Linda's towering rage that allowed me, the one who should be most upset, to remain calm.
Linda, please calm down. Breathe in, breathe out, inhale, exhale.
That foolish son. After some deep breathing, Linda calmed down a bit. But her anger was far from subsiding. Seeing her like this made me start to laugh.
Kate?
Surprised, Linda looked at me as I suddenly burst into laughter. I smiled at Linda and then hugged her. Thank you so much, Linda.
Kate?
For getting angry on my behalf, for conducting such an investigation for me. I really appreciate it. Of course. You are my precious daughter, after all. Daughter. I never realized how happy being called that could make me. Since Ben's passing, I've become quite teary, and once again, tears welled up. But I can't spend all my time crying. After stepping away from Linda, I wiped away my tears roughly and looked at my husband. You.
What?
Let's get a divorce.
Fine by me, I'll gladly do it.
I desperately suppressed another wave of laughter and then confirmed with my husband.
So, about the will, about the inheritance? All right, I accept Dad's will.
I looked at the lawyer, who slowly nodded. The lawyer was designated as the executor of the will. I was sure he would handle the following procedures smoothly. Taking a moment to breathe, I then moved on to another matter.
Shall we begin?
My statement was met with nods from Linda and the attending relatives. My husband was the only one who didn't understand.
What more is there to discuss?
To my clueless husband, I said with a smile. It's obvious, isn't it?
The compensation claim for your affair. What?
Why did he think it would all end here? With evidence of his infidelity right in front of us, it wasn't going to be just a divorce and goodbye.
Don't joke. Compensation on top of the inheritance. What a greedy woman you are. Coming from someone who pushed the care of his parents onto his wife and had affairs.
Really, the nerve. Don't joke is my line.
We have a lawyer here, and plenty of witnesses, so why don't we have a thorough discussion? I just remembered something I have to do. What could be more important than what we're doing now? Don't run away, you fool!
Before I could grab his hand, someone else grabbed my husband by the neck. It was Ben's brother, hardened by his construction work. Behind him stood Ben's equally formidable brother. They nodded in agreement. Muscles really do have an impact. After that, under the watchful eyes of the Muscle brothers, other relatives, and Linda, my husband couldn't flee. He had no choice but to stay and discuss until everything was settled.
Today's another beautiful day.
Looking up, the sky was cloudless and clear. Half a year had passed since then. Thanks to the lawyer, the inheritance proceedings went very smoothly. The divorce was finalized, and I was enjoying living alone. I really wanted to live with Linda, but now that we were strangers due to the divorce, Linda stubbornly refused, not wanting to make me her caregiver again. As a result, Linda moved into a nursing home with the money from selling the house. I visit her once a week. It seems like a wonderful place, and Linda seems happy. In the end, I feel like this was the best outcome. The house was sold. That means, essentially, the house was gone. As for my ex-husband, who was practically kicked out, well, according to the will, he received his share of the inheritance. He was overjoyed at first, but then his face turned pale. Why? Because the inheritance had almost vanished. The reason goes without saying. Compensation, of course. My husband's inheritance was gone. Not enough from the inheritance alone, so he also had to pay from his savings. As a result, my husband ended up penniless. And more than that, it seems his affair became known at his company. Particularly among the female staff, he was given the cold shoulder and became quite isolated, leading to a series of mistakes, it seems.
That woman, she's my boss, but didn't defend me properly,
he was saying over the phone. And it turns out that this boss was a woman and, astonishingly, the mistress was his boss. Maybe that explains the mysterious salary raise. But as soon as the affair came to light, he was dumped by the mistress, who also faced a demotion due to the affair and other ethics violations. I made sure she paid compensation too. That's only right.
It's your fault I kept making mistakes and got fired.
He tried to blame it all on me. But that's not my problem, is it?
You got used to caring for Ben, so looking after me should be easy for you,
he said, but no, that's entirely different. I couldn't respond with anything but laughter. So, I blocked his calls. I don't know what became of my husband after that. And I don't want to know. To forget about that foolish husband, I started working, and it turned out to be refreshing and enjoyable. The world is so much broader than I thought. A sense of excitement for a bright future welled up in me unknowingly. Gazing up at the contrails stretching straight across the blue sky, I squinted my eyes. My daughter Sharon's husband Christopher suddenly said with a sly smile,
I want to take this opportunity and discuss this with you. I had a DNA test taken because I thought she didn't look like me. And it turns out she's not my daughter.
Christopher said so, pointing at my granddaughter Tiana, who was being held by Sharon. I made an eye contact with my husband Dylan while Christopher was unable to hide his smirk. I figured as much. I was disappointed, but anger quickly overtook me.
So you've been cheating on me behind my back? You bastard! Were you having an affair with one of the fathers who picks up their kids from daycare?
His raised voice caught the attention of those around us. I felt truly sorry. I still wanted to believe in him.
A woman like this is totally untrustworthy. Divorce. I want a divorce.
Sharon seemed unable to comprehend Christopher's sudden change. Tiana, sensing something was wrong, started crying, and her cries echoing around us. I couldn't believe he was this kind of person. I felt an anger towards him like I had never felt before for neglecting my daughter. Looking over at Dylan, I saw him with an angry expression, fists clenched. This was our only chance. I exchanged glances with Dylan, then took out a photo we had prepared in advance. This photo was our trump card. With hands trembling with anger, I held up the photo in front of Christopher. My name is Violet. I'm a 55-year-old housewife. I live a commonplace life, but I cherish the certain happiness I feel and value the peaceful family life I have. My family consists of my husband Dylan, who currently works at a travel agency, my daughter Sharon, a nursery teacher, and my granddaughter Tiana. We are a family of 4. Until recently, Christopher, Sharon's husband, who's also an assistant director who works at a TV station, lived with us. When he was still in this house, I never dreamed we would end up living separately. Our current life goes back to when I met Dylan. Meeting Dylan was a story from decades ago. Back then, it was common for our marriages to be arranged by our parents. He was 5 years older, in the prime of his career at a travel agency. He had a manly and serious look about him, which left a good impression on me. Due to his job, he was knowledgeable about geography all over the world. I remember him talking excitedly about the charms of various tourist destinations over dinner. Holding a glass of beer in his hand, he said with enthusiasm, "My favorite place is definitely the pyramids of Egypt. It's what I recommend most to customers. The pyramids, made of limestone, used to shine white, reflecting the sun when they were first built." His carefree smile like a little boy stirred something in my heart. Seeing him like that, I wanted to sit next to him and hear more. "I would love for you to take me to your recommended places, Dylan." To that he responded with a smile. "Leave it to me." That's how we hit it off, starting a relationship with marriage in mind. Dylan was busy with work, but he always made time for me. His experience in a travel agency showed in how perfectly he planned our dates and trips. I wanted to walk through life with this man. After a few months of dating, I was convinced that we could make a married life work. "Please marry me. I want to see the pyramids with you on our honeymoon." It was an unplanned proposal. He stared at me wide-eyed for a few seconds, then broke into a broad smile. "Of course. Thank you." "Really? I'm sorry I made you say it." Thus, having confirmed our feelings for each other, we officially pledged our love at our wedding a few months later. True to our promise, we went to Egypt to see the pyramids on our honeymoon. That scenery will never fade in my mind, even after many years. In the midst of what could be called the pinnacle of happiness, our daughter Sharon was born. Life with a child passed surprisingly quickly, and before we knew it, Sharon had grown up and become a respectable nursery teacher. Sharon, who always loved children, seemed fulfilled, even though she was often busy with the kids at the nursery. Through her work, she started talking about wanting to get married and have her own children. She came to me for advice when she was 26. "Mom, do you remember Nicola from my university? I talked to her about getting married, and she invited me to a party. I'm not sure if I should go or not." Seeing my daughter seemingly exhausted from thinking about marriage and kids, I decided to give her a push. "Well, isn't this a chance? You can trust an invitation from Nicola. Why not just go and see?" Sharon looked somewhat anxious, but eventually decided to go. And so the day of the party came. Sharon left the house wearing fancier clothes than usual. Her makeup, different from her normal style, seemed to be done with extra effort. Dylan and I had dinner alone for the first time in a while. As we ate, Dylan seemed restless. "What's wrong? Wasn't the dinner good?" I asked half-jokingly, and Dylan replied awkwardly, "Of course not. I'm just a bit worried about Sharon. I hope she doesn't get deceived by some strange guy." I felt the same way. After all, I was the one who had encouraged Sharon to go. "I guess so. But it's Sharon, she'll be fine. She has a good eye for men. After all, she takes after me in that regard." "I guess you're right." I think we both were trying to mask our anxiety with laughter. Then, a few hours later, Sharon returned. When I asked how it went, Sharon said with a smile, "There was a great guy there. A really great guy." And she kept repeating how he was a good person. Whether it was from the cold air of January or the excitement of finding someone, her cheeks were flushed. "What kind of person is he?" Dylan asked, and to that Sharon proudly replied, "He's part of a TV crew. His name is Christopher. He goes on location shoots and visits all sorts of places. I went on many trips with you too, right? So, we hit it off." Upon hearing this, Dylan frowned slightly. "A TV crew, so he's in the entertainment industry, right? I don't have a very good impression of that. How should I put it? Didn't he look a bit frivolous?" "But you're the one who said, men who travel to different places and see various sceneries are trustworthy." He had black hair and didn't look frivolous at all. "Well, I did say that, but..." I calmed down Dylan, who didn't seem convinced, and told Sharon, "Anyway, make sure you date him properly and take your time to find out what kind of person he is. It's late now. You have work tomorrow, right?" I urged Sharon, who seemed quite drunk, to go to bed. After that, Sharon and Christopher officially started dating. Their relationship seemed to be going well, and Sharon introduced Christopher to me and Dylan. Christopher, being in the entertainment industry, initially seemed elusive. But after talking to him, he turned out to be very personable. So when they brought up marriage, I genuinely agreed. The best thing is to respect Sharon's choice. Thus, they continued their relationship smoothly and got married 2 years after meeting. Christopher, wearing an undoubtedly expensive suit, came to greet us formally. He held a bottle of high-end wine in his hand. I was genuinely happy for Sharon's marriage. Sharon's face, brimming with happiness, made it clear she was at the peak of her joy. Thinking back, that might have been the happiest time. Christopher, looking confident, addressed Dylan. "I've brought some wine. Let me pour you a glass." Dylan, albeit awkwardly, accepted it. The meal continued in a good atmosphere for a while. It was when the bottom of the wine bottle Christopher brought started to show that the mood changed. "You're in the entertainment industry, right? Frankly, I still can't trust you." Dylan's words made me freeze. The room suddenly became quiet, the atmosphere tense. I didn't want to ruin this happy moment. "Hey, why are you saying such unpleasant things all of a sudden?" I sharply said to Dylan. Sharon then spoke up. "That's right. What are you talking about, Dad? That's just prejudice. It's terrible that you can't trust the person I chose." Dylan's frown did not ease even at Sharon's words. Christopher tried to maintain a smile, but he was undoubtedly upset. The evening ended with an awkward atmosphere. After Christopher left, a sober Dylan sincerely apologized to us. Indeed, Dylan's opinion was nothing but a prejudice. Sharon's smile had proved Christopher was a good match, which was evident. Gradually, seeing our daughter's happy smile, Dylan began to accept Christopher. They were supposed to have pledged eternal love at their wedding. They were supposed to be in love. Now, I regret not listening more to Dylan's concerns. As Sharon was approaching her 30s, she announced her pregnancy. Both Dylan and I were overjoyed. Dylan, like when he talks about tourist destinations, awaited the grandchild's birth with a childlike smile. And I too, got too excited for my age. "You two are getting ahead of yourselves." Then, at Sharon's request, she and Christopher decided to move in with us. "We thought it would be better for everyone to live here together. We were saying you guys would surely be happy living with your grandchild." "That's true. You both have jobs, right? Leave the caregiving to Grandma and Grandpa." "Don't worry." Their belongings had already been moved from the nearby apartment where they had been living. Everything was prepared for the whole family to live together. Tears welled up as I thought about my daughter's growth and the upcoming birth of my grandchild. As we had these conversations, Sharon's belly grew. Christopher was still busy with work. I understood his job, but I wondered if he couldn't be a bit more supportive of Sharon. As for Sharon, being on maternity leave, she spent most of her time at home. I asked about Christopher's work. Sharon, rubbing her belly, defended him. "Christopher is busy. He's always on the go. But he calls every day to say good morning and good night. We're even thinking of names for the baby together. Hoping for a beautiful girl." "Oh, we'd love to help pick a name too." Sharon smiled, savoring her happiness, as she listed a few name options. As the due date approached, Sharon decided to name the baby Tiana. The moment Tiana was born, her vibrant cry was indescribably precious. Sharon's relieved expression. Tears in Christopher's eyes. Dylan's beaming smile. And Tiana, trying her best to breathe. I was confident that our lives were solid and would continue to be so. However, the happy future I envisioned never came to be. At the height of my daughter's happiness, I was shocked to learn a disturbing truth from Dylan. He had confirmed some unbelievable behavior from Christopher. I didn't want to doubt him. He was supposed to be the perfect husband for my precious daughter. Despite my uneasy feelings, Dylan, with a serious expression, insisted.
I saw it with my own eyes. I know it's hard to believe Christopher's suspicious behavior. Violet, you might not want to know, but it's true. That man is lying. To us and to Sharon.
I had never seen Dylan so emotional in over 30 years together. From his unsettled state, I learned everything. Dylan's seriousness made me realize the gravity of the situation. But it was too much to accept all at once. Why would Christopher do such a thing? What about Sharon and Tiana? My heart pounded, wishing I hadn't heard this truth. I wanted it all to be a lie. Especially since Tiana had just been born. Since Dylan told me, a swelling rage grew inside me. I felt the greatest anger of my life. I didn't know what the right answer was, but it was for Sharon and for Tiana. Reluctantly, I decided to follow Dylan's plan. Then we quietly began our preparations, just the two of us. Meanwhile, Tiana continued to grow. A month after her birth, we decided to go out as a family. The attendees were me, Dylan, Sharon, Christopher, and Tiana, 5 in total. I heard Christopher had planned this outing, which was a great surprise. He had arranged everything, including the meal. Dylan and I carefully prepared for the day. Upon arrival, Sharon lovingly watched Tiana. After taking a family photo with Tiana at the center, I wished for these peaceful days to continue. I glanced at Christopher. He wasn't looking at Sharon or Tiana. Although smiling, Christopher's attitude and tone seemed detached, as if preoccupied with something else. Then Christopher suddenly said with a sly smile,
I want to take this opportunity and discuss this with you. I had a DNA test taken because I thought she didn't look like me. And it turns out she's not my daughter.
Christopher said, so pointing at my granddaughter Tiana, who was being held by Sharon. I made an eye contact with my husband Dylan while Christopher was unable to hide his smirk. Just as I thought. I was disappointed, but quickly anger overwhelmed me.
The test results show that Tiana is not my child.
His shout drew the attention of those around us.
So you've been cheating on me behind my back? You bastard! Were you having an affair with one of the fathers who picks up their kids from daycare?
I felt a deep sense of regret. I still wanted to believe in him.
A woman like this can't be trusted at all. Divorce. I want a divorce.
Sharon seemed unable to comprehend Christopher's sudden change. She just froze and couldn't move. Sensing something amiss, Tiana, held by Sharon, started crying. Tiana's cries echoed throughout the area. After a moment, Sharon, with a look of astonishment, confronted Christopher.
What do you mean? Why would you say that all of a sudden I haven't cheated?
Christopher answered with a smug look.
You say you haven't cheated, but can you provide any concrete evidence right now?
I can't provide that, but I really haven't.
Ah, so you're making excuses. I have irrefutable evidence here.
Saying this, Christopher showed us the DNA test results and a divorce application. The test results indicated that there was no proof of a parent-child relationship between Christopher and Tiana. Half of the divorce application was already filled out. He had prepared all this. Sharon, faced with this evidence, couldn't say anything, her face on the verge of tears. Her lips were tightly pressed, enduring the pain, and my heart ached for her. Who could have imagined she would be treated this way?
The results show that she's not my child. A cheating woman made a child with some other man, and the DNA proves it. Sign the divorce papers quickly. If you resist, I'll take you to court and demand compensation.
Then Christopher, who had retracted his smile, spoke in a low voice.
Hey, I've got a good lawyer. You can't escape, so be prepared.
It's incredible how far he could take this act. This was the man he turned out to be. I felt a rage towards him like never before for neglecting my daughter. Glancing at Dylan, I saw he was angry too. Now was the only chance. I exchanged glances with Dylan and then took out a photo we had prepared in advance. This photo was our trump card. Holding it with trembling, angry hands, I presented it in front of Christopher.
If you're going to do that, we have something to present as well. Right, Dylan? Yes, indeed.
Dylan pulled several photos from his jacket pocket. They were photos of Christopher's infidelity, obtained by hiring a private investigator. Each photo was decisive evidence, but we had prepared multiple.
It's necessary to confront him thoroughly with irrefutable evidence. How come these are here? What's this?
In each of the several photos, Christopher was clearly visible. There were pictures of him walking arm in arm with an unknown woman, entering a hotel with a woman, and kissing a woman on the street, among others. Since the day Dylan confirmed Christopher's suspicious behavior, we had been investigating his actions with a detective. The skill of a professional detective is astounding.
So, you were regularly meeting another woman, planning to switch from Sharon to her? Who's the one cheating, I wonder?
Dylan also started yelling as well.
You bastard! Trampling on Sharon's feelings.
Christopher's smile had vanished, replaced by an unmistakable panic.
How did you find out? No, wait. This is fake. You made these composite photos to slander me, you liar. Sharon's the one cheating.
His voice was low at first, as if reassuring himself, then became accusatory, threatening us. But my anger was beyond control. Dylan, as if echoing my fury, shouted,
You're the one who is lying. Are you saying all these photos are fake?
Perhaps feeling overwhelmed by Dylan, or realizing his excuses were futile, Christopher suddenly became quiet. Dylan, although sometimes seen as unapproachable, hardly ever raises his voice. I realized for the first time how intimidating he could be when he was truly angry. Dylan took a breath and began talking in a quiet manner.
My discomfort wasn't mistaken. You might not have noticed, but I heard everything from the bathroom. Those overly suspicious conversations. Things like I'll manage the separation smoothly or help me forge the DNA report. I didn't intend to listen, but such conversations are obviously strange. You've been deceiving and hurting our daughters all this time.
Dylan had accidentally overheard Christopher's phone conversation while he was in the bathroom. Dylan had been close to the door without realizing Christopher was there. And then Dylan raised his voice again.
We're going to do another DNA test. Science will prove it. The second test should yield the same results, right? You'll take responsibility for what you've said. Don't even think about running away.
Christopher's legs wobbled, his nose running, reduced to a pitiable state. Tiana, tired from crying, had fallen asleep. Was he always such a pathetic man? I remembered his sharp, robust appearance when he first came to ask for our daughter's hand in marriage. That man was nowhere to be seen now. At that moment, something snapped inside me. Sharon must have felt the same. Her eyes brimming with tears, she looked at Christopher with a mix of disgust and pity. I rubbed Sharon's back.
I wanted to believe in you, if only I could.
I sighed heavily, but now that the truth was revealed, Christopher could only apologize. His pride gone, his apologies seemed too late. Then, as Christopher was profusely apologizing, Sharon approached him. With tears in her eyes, she lashed out at him angrily.
Don't joke around. It's too late to apologize now. Get out of our sight. You're the worst.
Christopher's apology was cut off by the sound of a sharp slap. It felt like a satisfying sound that dispelled the terrible atmosphere. After receiving a powerful slap from Sharon, Christopher collapsed to his knees. He tried to flee but seemed unable to move, his legs giving out.
As you wish, we'll part ways. Goodbye forever.
Christopher received the stares of everyone around. Urged by Sharon, Dylan and I left the scene. Sharon didn't look back, not even once. According to the detective's investigation, Christopher's affair partner was an ex-girlfriend. The reason they broke up was apparently because he was a part-timer with low income at the time. Back then, Christopher was juggling part-time night shifts at a grocery store and stocking shelves at a supermarket. Later, Christopher joined a TV crew, and during a street interview for a TV program, he happened to meet his ex-girlfriend again. It was a wide show hosted by a celebrity known for his sharp tongue. His ex-girlfriend seemed impressed with Christopher, who had made a place for himself in the entertainment business. By this time, Sharon was already pregnant. Both wanting to rekindle their relationship, the ex-girlfriend was quite cooperative with this plan. Such a hopeless situation, I thought. Now that I knew the whole truth, my anger was replaced more with disappointment. On the way home, none of us spoke a word. If even we, as parents, were deeply hurt, Sharon's emotional wounds must be immeasurable. In the heavy silence, Dylan broke the ice.
Hey. You should just rest for now. I'll take care of all the tedious things like the compensation claim and other procedures with Violet.
Sharon just nodded silently. I also spoke to Sharon.
Your life is still ahead of you. For Tiana's sake, eat delicious food, get plenty of sleep, enjoy beautiful scenery, and just focus on resting. We'll always be here to support you.
Sharon was still struggling to come to terms with her feelings. But with Tiana there, we had to move forward. Few months passed by, but Sharon tended to stay at home. Given what had happened, it was understandable. Yet gradually, she regained her smile and declared,
"If I keep mourning, Tiana's going to get mad at me. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry for worrying you so much. I'm thinking of returning to work soon."
As for the compensation, Christopher and his party ended up paying $15,000 each. It was a deserved retribution. And Christopher was dramatically dumped by his ex-girlfriend. She was furious about the large sum of money lost because of him.
"That's a fitting end for such a man,"
Dylan said with a face that couldn't hide his disgust. About half a year later, in a season of blue skies, Sharon successfully returned to work. Worried, I secretly visited her workplace. My concerns were unnecessary, as I saw Sharon lively and happily working surrounded by children. I told this to Dylan, and to that he proudly snorted.
"I told you there was no need to worry,"
though he had hesitated to come with me till the last minute. Hearing Dylan's words, I couldn't help but laugh, feeling our happy daily life returning. Despite everything, our family had regained peaceful days. Tiana was growing up healthy. Dylan, now past 60, was still actively working. Today, I'm preparing a meal for a family dinner. After setting the table, I said to everyone,
"Let's go on a family trip again. Anywhere, as long as we're together." "Absolutely. Anywhere we go will be fun."
At that moment, Tiana made a sound as if replying. Her incomprehensible babble was enough to bring a smile to Sharon's face. We all smiled in response. "Dad and Mom, live long, okay? I want to show Tiana the wide world. Just like the old times, I hope we can travel together again. Of course, I plan to live long. Right, Dylan?" "Yes, indeed. Maybe it's time to cut back on the alcohol." Dylan went to put the beer he had prepared back in the fridge. I too thought about starting walking myself to stay healthy. With these 4 people, I felt like we could do anything. I want to continue spending my days in this house, unchanged. Because I know there is certain happiness here.
"Looks like your company is going under."
The words were spat out with a look of sheer schadenfreude. Our company has always been looked down upon by her. Being in charge of dealing with her, I've been on the receiving end of this kind of abuse for a while.
"What are you talking about? This is a huge loss, and it's troubling. Even if it's tough, you're just a secondary contractor after all. Why not look for a new job if your company's sales go down?"
After placing a $300,000 order and canceling it at the last minute, and then saying something like this, she is really out of line. Her attitude and the way she treats our company are something I can't deal with on my own. But then, a chance encounter showed me a way to avoid the $300,000 loss.
"Are you kidding, huh? It's your company that's going to go under, I suppose."
What? Thus, Carol Smith was about to face some serious trouble. I'm Emily White. I'm turning 48 this year. I was married once when I was younger. But I got divorced 5 years ago and now I'm single. I had a child in elementary school, but when my husband and I split, he took our child and I moved out. I used to be a housewife when I was married. My husband was domineering, and I spent my days walking on eggshells around him. After the divorce, I hated the thought of marriage and couldn't imagine remarrying. I decided to live on my own. But as a single woman with a past as a housewife, I had no reliable source of income. That's when I stumbled upon a job ad for a web development company and managed to get a position as a secondary contractor. It was tough at first since I had no knowledge in the field. I was over 40 at the time and worked hard not to be outdone by age. Thankfully, I managed to keep up with the younger employees. Then, I was recognized by the sales manager and transferred to the sales department. Dealing with clients was challenging, but I found that I was good at sales and enjoyed it. However, we were trading with Dynamic Creations Inc. as our client, but its president's daughter named Carol Smith was incompetent, rude, and looked down on secondary contractors. I was troubled by her attitude many times. I've been feeling a bit off lately. Being at the age for menopause, my OB/GYN advised me not to stress too much. But the stress seemed to only increase no matter how much I tried to alleviate it. As soon as I arrived at work, there was a call from Carol. White speaking, how can I help you? It's Smith. The web modifications you did are causing problems again. Can you fix it quickly? Get an engineer on it. It seemed that a part of the web page we worked on for their company was malfunctioning, and they wanted it fixed quickly. But that issue was already fixed last month, and after rechecking, there were no problems. Didn't you tamper with it somehow? Of course not. It's your company's incompetence that's causing this. Fix it fast. Reluctantly, I explained the situation to our engineers and asked them to handle it. However, they reported that the malfunction was not due to anything they did, but rather someone else's interference. Ms. Smith, I have a report. According to our engineers, the malfunction is occurring in a part that our company didn't handle. Maybe someone else tampered with it? What are you talking about? I won't accept such an excuse. The malfunction caused a lot of inconvenience to our customers. I didn't want to admit any fault on our company's part without evidence, but decided to apologize to resolve the situation. I'm sorry. Oh well. It's not a big deal this time. We'll be billing you for the consignment fee. What? What are you saying? Do it for free. She hung up unilaterally. It wasn't our company's fault. Carol, this president's daughter, pretends to know about the web but complains like this, making our engineers reluctant to work with her company. According to the engineers, it seemed likely that an inexperienced engineer had made some sort of error that caused the malfunction. Even though our company's engineers didn't cause the issue, we were called in and ended up not getting paid for it. I kept getting complaints from the engineers, and she blamed me unilaterally, so I was about to burst with stress. That evening, I decided to go to a bar I had wanted to try for a while, hoping to unwind with a drink. I planned to enjoy a quiet drink alone. I ordered my favorite food, sipped my preferred drink, and was pleasantly tipsy when I noticed two women enjoying their drinks at the table behind me. One of them was Carol. Maybe she was with a colleague. The woman with her was elegantly dressed. You know, the employees at that secondary contractor are so incompetent, it's frustrating. The woman with her just nodded and smiled, lightly agreeing. Secondary contractor. Were they talking about our company? There might be other secondary contractors they work with, but I was curious and listened in. By then, my buzz had worn off. So, this weird auntie is my contact at the secondary contractor. You'd think salespeople would be more stylish, right? But this auntie looks so ordinary. The other woman just chuckled without comment. Carol kept talking. That auntie, she's divorced and used to be a housewife. It's so uncool. A woman who doesn't care about her appearance. I wonder what she's thinking. It's kind of amusing to me, a good stress reliever. It was definitely about me, divorced and a former housewife. I don't pay much attention to my looks. More like, I can't afford to spend much on it. So I always wear the same kinds of clothes and hardly put on makeup. I couldn't stand being there anymore and left the bar. Unnoticed by Carol. The bar, meant to be my stress reliever, ended up being another unpleasant experience. Back home, exhaustion washed over me. I looked at my face in the mirror. Tired, with dark circles under my eyes. I should put on some makeup. I opened my makeup box. Just powder and one old lipstick. I couldn't even remember when I bought them. I opened my closet. It was filled with plain clothes. I sighed. When I was married, I couldn't buy anything with my husband's money, and after the divorce, I had no assets and was desperate for money. I never had a fulfilling life as a woman, balancing work and personal life. But Carol, who doesn't know me, shouldn't be saying such things about me. Tears fell as I looked in the mirror, lost in thought. The next day at work, Carol called again, and I was stressed out from the start. What can I do for you? I need to talk to you. Can you come to our office right away? Yes, I understand. I canceled my other plans and headed to her company. I've arrived. Oh, sit down. I have some good news. Good news. Frankly, good news from she made me feel uneasy. We're starting a new project, and I want your company to handle it. What kind of project? It's completely unrelated to web development. We're thinking of distributing free catalogs to boost sales. Can you handle the production? Our company isn't a printing company, but we have the technology to do more than just web development and advertising. We might be able to use that. I'll check with our company first. By the way, how much are we talking about for the contract? Well, considering everything including subsidiaries and affiliates, it should be around $300,000. A $300,000 order is a significant deal for a secondary contractor like us. It's pressure, but it could also be a big opportunity. I immediately consulted with our president. He tends to leave decisions to the staff, and he quickly gave the go-ahead. It's that kind of company, but I thought I could figure out the production process from scratch. Ms. Smith, regarding our recent discussion, our company will take care of it. Thanks. Let's get the contract sorted then. I think we need about 140 copies. And then, things moved forward. I started preparing for the catalog production, reaching out within the company and to acquaintances. It cost money, but completing the project would bring in $300,000. I managed to make a sample first and showed it to Carol. This looks good. Proceed with it. She approved it surprisingly quickly. The production seemed to be going well. But on the day we started printing, she called and said, "Actually, I've decided to cancel the printing. Consider the contract null and void." What? This means your company is going under. She said this to me with a triumphant tone. What are you talking about? This is a huge loss, and it's troubling. It's troubling, but you're just a secondary contractor. Why not find a new job if your company's sales drop? I reached my breaking point with stress and anger. I won't forgive this. I muttered to myself, canceling a $300,000 order on the day of, it's more than just a loss. Our company is small, and being a secondary contractor, we're always at risk of going under. But the printing was already underway. The catalogs would be finished in a week. I couldn't sleep that night. How will I explain this to the president tomorrow? The next day, feeling demotivated, I couldn't bring myself to go to the office, so I spent my time at a cafe and walking around to escape reality. That's when I bumped into one of my mom friends from my housewife days. Olivia. Emily? Is that you? It was a reunion after a long time. Olivia had given me advice on amicable divorce and was someone I relied on a lot for child-related issues. Despite being the same age, she was like a big sister to me. She used to work as a legal advisor for a corporation but now works freelance, focusing on educational outreach for fraud victims. Emily, we haven't seen each other since your divorce. How are you? I'm fine, thanks. I'm working hard now. You're doing well. We ended up chatting for so long that we decided to continue our conversation over drinks at a nearby bar. I couldn't help but vent about my work frustrations to Olivia, whom I hadn't seen in a while. Then she said, "Is the company you work for a secondary contractor for Dynamic Creations Incorporated? How did you know?" I was their counsel for a while, so I'm familiar with the inside story. I remembered that she had been a legal advisor for various companies and knew a lot about different industries. So, what's the real deal? Being a secondary contractor, we can't really oppose them. But their demands are often unreasonable. What's the industry's reputation like? It's bad, just between us. Really? Yes. It's not so much the company, but the president's daughter who has a particularly bad reputation. I thought so. I had always thought Carol was just a mean person who looked down on us because we were a secondary contractor. In my venting session, I decided to tell Olivia about the sudden cancellation of the $300,000 order. So, you're dealing with Mr. Smith's daughter, right? Do you interact with her a lot? It's not just interaction, it's been really tough lately. I told her everything about receiving the $300,000 catalog order, researching techniques, getting cooperation from within the company, and just when I thought we were about to complete a significant project, it got canceled on the day of. I couldn't stop talking. Remembering it all, I felt so frustrated that tears came to my eyes. Emily, that must have been hard. Are you okay? Wipe your tears. I have to report this to the president tomorrow. I might get fired, and our company's revenue will suffer. Well. She thought for a while. Leave this matter to me. What? Just tell me what you want. I'll think about it. There might be something I can do. Who would have thought someone would offer to help like this? I was grateful she was even willing to listen, let alone take it on as her own issue. Tell me what you want. First, I want the contract to be executed properly since it's a big deal for our company. If that's not possible, I want compensation of $300,000. I conveyed my desperate hopes to her. Understood. Anything else? I want Carol to suffer. It's a personal grudge, though. I hesitated to share such resentment with Olivia, but I did it anyway. Okay, got it. Could you report the facts to your president and ask him to contact me? Contact Olivia from the president? What does that mean? Does she have some connection with our company, like being a legal advisor or something? Should I have the president contact you? Yes. Your company's president knows my husband. You didn't know, did you? She smiled confidently, as if to say, leave it to me. I really appreciate this connection. I'll do as you say. Let me consider how to thank you later on. After that conversation, I immediately went back to the office and explained everything to the president. As expected, he was furious. Not with me, but with Dynamic Creations Incorporated. After I mentioned Olivia, he seemed to understand the situation and said he would contact her, then I went back to work. The printing of the catalog had started. There were 140 copies. What to do with this inventory? Then I got a call from Olivia. I've talked with your president. Leave the rest to me. I'd like to come and see the catalog you're currently making. I have the president's permission. Okay. I'll be waiting. About 10 minutes later, Olivia came to the company. She looked at the catalog. Dynamic Creations Incorporated's achievements are all lies. But I'll buy these. What? If I buy them, your company won't suffer a loss. Then, pretending to be an employee from here, I'll visit Dynamic Creations Incorporated under the guise of being your new contact. We'll talk more later. I decided to leave everything to her. I've got an idea. First, we'll pretend you're quitting, and I'll be your replacement to greet Carol. Me quitting? Yes, she looks down on secondary contractors, including you. If you quit, she will target me next. That made sense, but what was her plan? My interest was piqued. That could be true. From there, it's my turn to shine. Just wait and see. Okay. I'll act like I'm quitting. Thus, I went with Olivia to greet Carol. Nice to meet you. I'm Olivia Wilson. What's going on? Ms. White, what does this mean? I'm resigning, effective immediately. Really? So, Ms. Wilson is your replacement? Then Olivia greeted her. Yes, I look forward to working with you. After a brief silence, Carol repeated, You're leaving, huh? Well, it makes sense after losing the $300,000 deal. Yes, I'm leaving. Because of you. Olivia interrupted our conversation and took over. Both of you, please calm down. Ms. Smith, about the catalog, you wanted to cancel it on the day of printing? Yes, I forgot I had already ordered from another secondary contractor. It's just a small company, so stopping the printing on the same day should be feasible, right? Unfortunately, the cancellation was not possible, so the printing is complete. We will send the invoice for payment. Carol paused, seemingly unprepared. That's impossible. Another secondary contractor is already printing it. That sounds like you just forgot you had ordered from another company and panicked, canceling our company's order. I cornered Carol with the realization of her mistake. That's irrelevant. I can't pay your company $300,000. In that case, the printed material becomes our property, and we'll take responsibility for sending it to your company's affiliates. If you're not charging us, that's fine. My boss won't find out about my mistake. Here's the list of companies. We'll arrange the shipment right away. Thank you. I bid farewell to Carol as I left. Thank you for everything, Ms. Smith. Hey, White. Blaming me for your resignation is unfair. It's not my fault. You're going bankrupt anyway. Are you joking, huh? Your company is the one going bankrupt. What? Olivia echoed my sentiment. Your company is the one facing bankruptcy. We left Carol's company. On our way out, Olivia was arranging to send the catalogs to the companies Carol was dealing with, using Carol's company name and hers as the sender. In fact, the catalogs were blank inside. We managed to stop the content from being printed on the day of printing. A few days later, what kind of spiteful thing did you do by quitting? Carol called me furiously. What's wrong? The companies are angry because the catalogs we sent are blank. I'm getting non-stop complaint calls. Imagining her overwhelmed with complaints, I almost laughed but held back. I'm sorry. That's not enough. Thanks to you, deals I was about to close are getting canceled. I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. That's unfortunate. I hung up the phone unilaterally. I felt strangely uplifted. The next day, Carol made an unexpected visit to our office. White, I have a request before you leave. What is it? I doubt there's much I can do. I'll pay the $300,000. But I need you to tell the companies that the blank catalogs were a mistake. If we lose these deals, I don't know what will happen to my company. Seeing her weakened, I pressed further. The catalogs being blank was a terrible mistake. I'm sorry, I had no idea. It's not about that. Please contact the companies and apologize, saying it was your company's mistake. Please, do something. I won't do it. I've been persistently mistreated by you, and I almost suffered a $300,000 loss because of you. She started crying. I'll pay the $300,000. That has already been paid. What? This is a company issue, so I explained the situation to your father, the president, and he has already made the payment. Carol realized that her father, the last person she wanted to know, was now aware of the issue, and her attitude changed. I'm sorry, it was all my fault. If this gets out, I won't be able to stay at the company because of my many mistakes. I feel terrible for causing such a loss to the company and to Dad. Please forgive me.
You know, if your father finds out about this, he'll be embarrassed in front of the entire company.
She was on her knees, crying. I don't want to embarrass my dad. What should I do? Tell me, Ms. White. While inwardly thinking it's not my problem, I watched her crying.
Shall I tell your father about all the harassment you've inflicted on our company?
I'm sorry. Please, no more. I'll apologize as many times as needed. She continued to cry.
Ms. Smith, you've always looked down on us because you're the president's daughter, right? Be honest.
She shook her head desperately, denying it. You think we, the secondary contractors, would believe that?
I didn't mean it that way. But if it seemed like that, I'm sorry.
I watched her pitiful figure for a while, but as she didn't stop crying, I left her and went back to my work. By evening, she was gone.
She's gone. My retribution is over.
I muttered to myself and headed home. Carol, due to the catalog incident, faced a barrage of complaints from companies and was apparently fired by her father, the president. Her company suffered significant losses and a drop in revenue, as expected. Thanks to my friend Olivia, I was saved in many ways. Having actually resigned from the secondary contractor, I'm now helping with Olivia's educational outreach, and through her referral, have managed to step up to a sales position at a larger company. I'm truly grateful to her and treasure our connection as I continue to work hard.